Welcome everyone to our June Practice Vital monthly meetup. For those of you who are newer to our group, we like to host these as a chance to just get together, share some thoughts, ideas, thought leadership pieces, or invite guest speakers as we have today to share some perspective that we perhaps haven't explored yet as a practice when it comes to managing our data and putting that to good use. I'll introduce our speaker here in a second, but know that we will reserve some time at the end for conversation, questions, some housekeeping and so forth. So feel free to save anything more specific or broader to the Practice Vital conversation for the end. And as always, feel free to drop any questions as we go into chat as well. So with that, I will introduce Kristie. Kristie has joined us. Plantinga. Am I pronouncing that correctly, Kristie?
Plantinga, but I don't care. So
Great, great.
whatever you feel.
Wonderful. Well, welcome, Kristie. Thank you so much for joining us. For those who haven't had a chance to cross paths with Kristie, she is a writer, a speaker, an entrepreneur in the mental health marketing space specifically. And she has kindly agreed to join us today to share some of her wisdom. We crossed paths about a month ago, I would say, right, Kristie?
I think so.
When we were, talking through some of our shared customers, people that you've been working with that are also using Practice Vital, and sort of the light bulbs were going off in Kristie's mind and how some of our data, particularly retention data, can really smartly help inform a practice's marketing strategy. And we're going to dig into that today, specifically in the realm of SEO and what that relationship between retention and SEO can look like for a practice, which isn't always the first thing that comes to mind when we think about the value of great retention and the data that we're extracting from Practice Vital, how to put that to work for your practice. This might be sort of a new realm to explore or consider when you're thinking about that piece of the equation. So, Kristie owns and has founded Place Digital as a boutique marketing firm that specifically helps mental health marketing practices as well as individual therapists. But she works with many group practices that do or not yet work with Practice Vital and sort of leveraging their data to put that to good use within the marketing space. So without further ado, I'll hand it to you, Kristie, to kind of kick things off, and feel free to further elaborate on your background and experience as we dig in.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is a really exciting space, I think, just for me to be in, because the fact that you all invest in Practice Vital tells me that you're serious about this stuff and you're serious about the kind of impact you want to have. You're serious entrepreneurs, you understand the importance of the performance of your practice. So it's really fun. Even when Madeline and I met, or is it Madeline?
Oh, it's Madeline. That's good.
Yeah.
You're good.
Madeline, we just started nerding out immediately about all these different cool things that you can track and Practice Vitals. So, yeah, super excited to get into it today. We do serve exclusively group practices at Place Digital. We have some products and different things like that for solo practitioners, but scaling group practices with SEO and a few other things is like all we do. But yeah, let me quick share my screen. There we go. Okay. Can everybody see my screen okay?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. Yeah, so it was fun kind of coming up with like how does a practice's performance really impact SEO? And it's actually something I think about a lot, which is exciting that then a tool like Practice Vital exists. So today I'll be talking about how client retention actually is an SEO strategy and how that reflects very tangibly on Google in the algorithm. So I just have another slide to introduce myself. You've heard about me enough. But here's what I've noticed from working with therapists. I've done this for 7 years. I've worked with hundreds of therapists. I've spoken to thousands at this point. Most therapists and group practice owners included, most, I'm saying, see digital marketing as just an expense. So it's this necessary bill that they pay every month with a sigh. They don't really see marketing as the very thing that generates revenue in the business. And because of this, I'm actually gonna, there we go. Because of this, marketing is often siloed from other aspects of the business. like intake and operations. But your practice's real life reputation and your practice's online reputation are inextricably linked, actually. So, treating marketing as if it's separate or secondary is a thing of the past at this point. Seeing marketing and your clinicians' retention as separate from revenue generation at this point, I think is dangerous. Years ago, maybe that wouldn't have been the case as much just because things were a lot less competitive online. I think you could get away with a lot less. You could get away with kind of mediocre outcomes, but Google's getting smarter and smarter about this kind of stuff. So I think this takes shape in a few ways. Marketing always starts with the client experience. So the best marketer in the world cannot fabricate an exceptional product. You know, if you're trying to sling a broken product or just not a good company, that's really, really difficult because people will eventually find out. Google will eventually find out. Google is getting smarter, much smarter. They're getting better and better at drawing the connection between your practice's IRL reputation and your online one. And how they do that is by translating your practice's performance via ranking signals. And if they see that your practice isn't cutting it, they'll actually penalize you in a lot of instances. So this is one of the kind of models that I've developed in my work. And I didn't come up with this. I want to make that very clear. This is just something that I observed across our most successful clients. And I gave it a name, kind of organized it, but I call it the proactive practice system. And it's essentially three things that are always feeding into each other. And those signal a group practice that's scaling successfully. It's much, easier to run. It's much less stressful. And it all starts with lead generation. And this is usually where people think that marketing only lives. Because if you have a group practice, if you don't have a lot of leads coming in, it's essentially impossible to scale without that. I just don't see a world in which that can be done. So lead generation is obviously very important. And then that feeds into more of your sales process. Are things being automated? Are you just signing up a lot of clients because your sales process is so dialed in? Are you using all these marketing automations that can make you available 24/7 to clients just via text? Not that people can like text you all the time and like ask for clinical advice, but just so they can get in contact with your practice quickly. And then, of course, the delegation piece, that your admin team or whoever's doing your intakes, they're really compassionate. They're good at what they do. So those are kind of separate from what I'm talking about today. Today, we're more focusing on this piece, and this is your online and local reputation. This is also where PracticeVital comes in to help you with these sort of things. If clients are having a good experience, this is kind of in that realm, then they're going to tell their friends. They're going to leave you reviews. They're going to recommend you on Reddit and Facebook. And then all of that feeds back into lead generation. So the better your reputation is, obviously, the more clients you have out there who had a great experience with you and are happy to refer to you anytime someone asks them about their experience in therapy. But also it has very tangible effects on Google as well. And that all just means more leads and you can do the cycle all over again. So client retention is a ranking factor and it's critical to your success on Google if that's the kind of marketing that you want to do. It really all falls apart without that clinical excellence dialed in, no matter how much you're even spending on marketing. So the bottom line is this. The algorithm is designed to provide the best recommendations. That's how Google makes money. They need to be the best search engine out there so more people keep coming back so they can run more ads. This is their whole thing. Mentions online, reviews, and backlinks are Google's best effort to verify that real-world social proof. So obviously Google exists online. They don't exist in the real world. So here's exactly how this plays out on Google. And I want to focus on two very tangible things. If retention is lacking, past clients will not recommend you online. That means no organic mentions in places like Facebook groups or Reddit. And these external signals across platforms are even more important for AIO. So when someone is using ChatGPT to find a therapist, which That's not as common as I think the industry is making out to be. It's certainly coming up more and more, where people are using AI. But AI uses those external signals even more than traditional SEO does, which is interesting. And also, past clients will not leave reviews. If they leave early, if they had a bad experience, they're just not going to do it. And reviews are the ultimate translation of your real world reputation and your online one. So our most successful clients have dozens of 5-star reviews on Google Business. And yes, we will briefly talk about that more, because I know reviews is always like a thing for therapists, as it should be. So let's start with more of the organic online mentions. And I'm going to specifically focus on referrals from Facebook and Reddit. So a side note about Reddit, forums are becoming more and more popular for Google to show up on the search results, because that's information from real people. And this is another signal that they want to see real world evidence that a practice, a therapist is actually good at what they do. And what's cool about some Reddit threads is they can rank for years on Google for highly competitive keywords. So it's almost like having your own kind of secondary search result for different keywords just because you're mentioned on Reddit. Like I mentioned, Google and AI tools like ChatGPT see those mentions and they love them, because that is an authentic form of social proof that they can cling on to in order to make the best recommendation. You can also get backlinks, which if anyone here has, studied SEO or tried it themselves, even for a couple hours, you've likely heard about backlinks, which are also a ranking factor. And that's links from other websites back to yours. And those backlinks supercharge these online mentions. So you can get mentioned online without a backlink. It's still valuable, but both of those things together, that is an extremely valuable asset for your practice. And the bonus with this kind of stuff is the referrals are warm. So they're really, really likely to convert. So the sales process is just a bit easier. And I'm sure you all see it in your own data that referrals are probably much more likely to convert than kind of a cold lead from Psychology Today or wherever. So a little visual on how this plays out. So I just put in therapist in Denver, scrolled down to the discussion and forums section, clicked on this result. Here's what it looks like in the subreddit Denver, where I live. And we could see that lots of recommendations were made, and I just kind of pulled this one out. Therapist, what they do, and also a link to their site. So this is really the goal with all of this. And if the retention was bad, or of course, if that therapy seeker, that client had a bad experience with that therapist, this would never happen. So these aren't necessarily things that can be optimized for from a marketing perspective, because that just has to come naturally from the practice. So that's an example of Reddit. And we see the same thing on Facebook. Anyone here from Colorado looking for some referrals for a therapist here? Same thing. I live in Pueblo. I see this person. This is the kind of thing that cannot be fabricated. You cannot pay for this kind of thing, unless if it would be spam, which I think most of you would feel pretty mixed about doing. And Google sniffs that kind of stuff out eventually anyways. So those are more of those organic mentions on Reddit and Facebook, but they can show up all over, right? I'm just focusing on those two things. Next is the Google business reviews. In my experience, these are more important than ever. So Google business reviews make a massive difference in our clients' performance on Google Maps, we've noticed. Because across our client roster, Google Maps is the #1 referral source that they have, because Google Maps are right at the top of the search engine results page. It's a great user experience because people can see, the website, where you're located, really quick. Do you have like over 4 stars on Google? So they know that you're actually decent at what you do. And Google loves Google Maps. People love Google Maps. AI also loves Google Maps, which I'm going to show you in a sec. So we've just noticed a very, very strong correlation between the amount of good reviews and a client's performance on Google. It is an extremely strong correlation. So I think Google Maps really is the future. So I just did a quick search in ChatGPT. Can you help me find a trauma therapist in Chicago? And we see Google Maps results embedded into ChatGPT. And they do, of course, link to websites as well, but this visually is obviously what's taking up the most space. ChatGPT changes their, results, if you want to call them that, all the time. So we can never take one result as like, oh, this is how it's being done. But I've done this enough times that they're showing their hand a little bit, right? They like Google Maps. So the better you can do on Google Maps, the better it's also going to be when future-proofing your practice in the age of AI. And if you don't have reviews, you're probably not going to have rankings. So even more important to focus on that in the age of AI as well. This is just a little case study I wanted to bring up. So this is a highly competitive keyword, psychotherapist in New York City. Maybe some of you are located in New York City and you know that it's a very competitive market. And this is our client who puts in a ton of effort into getting Google reviews. She has 4.9 out of 5 stars, 73 reviews. And she is the #1 result. Like I think I maybe scrolled past the sponsored results, but in terms of organic results, she is at the top for that. And yeah, sure, I'll pat myself on the back a little bit. We certainly helped, but we cannot recreate this for her. And we help, in different ways, which I can get into, but this is just purely our client's effort. And we can see actually when we look at, this is the last 30 days of just their form submissions, so no calls or anything. We can see that 84% of these leads are attributable to Google, AI, or Reddit. So it's a huge source. I mean, it's interesting for maybe you all to reflect on your own referral sources. And they only have like 5 referrals right now. And they're actually pretty new practice. So they're kind of like building out that client base. But I'm sure for most of you, this is probably one of the higher sources of leads. So it's interesting to see if you can just prioritize reviews, how much that can really make for a practice that's even newer, that doesn't have that whole built out referral network from just their clients. So it all starts with your leadership. This is why PracticeVital is such a great tool for group practice owners to have, because you can insist upon excellence. Of course, train your clinicians, equip them with what they need to be really successful, get those great client outcomes, but then also holding them to account objectively with data from PracticeVital. So some really concrete next steps for you to take. Always work on improving retention and client outcomes. Clinical quality has to come first. So, that private or the proactive practice system, that visual I showed earlier, we will not partner with a group practice if we can tell that there's fishy stuff going on. Because just from our end, we don't want to invest all of our strategies and resources into a company that it's like, they're not really doing that good of work. It just doesn't feel good. But also it's kind of like attaching all of our business to a sinking ship a little bit. So even from like when I look at it as a marketer, I'm kind of assessing whether a partnership would be a good fit. I'm always looking for signs of that clinical quality, and a picture can be painted on Google pretty clearly. I recommend building review generation into your offboarding process. And I know any review generation techniques, it's really up to your personal comfortability. Obviously, there's a lot of ethical considerations when it comes to review generation. But I think I have, and I'm not a therapist, right? So it's like I'm not putting my license on the line or anything. But a lot of our clients are comfortable with this, and they've done it ethically and seamlessly with marketing automations. So once the client relationship is over, power dynamic is gone, they feel comfortable sending a feedback form. And in some cases, that might route to their Google business. And a third thing that you can do is just send a really simple monthly newsletter to your referrals and past and current clients. That way you're staying top of mind and you're keeping your loyal clients and referrals apprised of new clinicians, new groups, trainings. Staying top of mind is what's going to help you get those referrals. So if they ever see, they're scrolling on Reddit and they see someone's looking for a therapist, they can say, oh, I just got a newsletter from, my colleague here, and I think that'd be great for you. Same with clients. So just staying top of mind, knowing that every client you've served also kind of becomes a marketing asset in a way. And of course, with any kind of marketing communications amongst clients, making sure you have the appropriate marketing consent is really important. A lot of therapists maybe don't understand that step or they skip that step. Probably more likely it's like not even doing newsletters because I think they got a bad rep and I don't think they're great to do every week or anything. But having those just built into your practice to always kind of like drum up business, stay top of mind, that is going to help you reflect that on Google as well. So that's really it. And then I want to stop for questions and discussion. But if you are interested in working with me and my team, you can just send an email to me directly, Kristie@placedigital.com. And I'd love to learn more about you and your practice, see if maybe we'd be a good fit. But yeah, I will stop there because that was a lot of talking and I couldn't see the clock. So I don't know how fast that was.
Oh, that's great, Kristie. Thank you. Let's yeah, if anyone feel free to come off of mute if you have questions.
Yeah, happy to talk about Google business, reviews, SEO, AIO, all sorts of stuff.
Well, I have a question. We're in San Antonio,
Hmm.
and it's become more competitive with Google Ads, lately. I mean, we've been in business here over 10 years. What do you think has changed in that landscape that has
Hmm.
made it more competitive, and what can we do as a group practice to maybe still stay relevant on Google?
Yeah. And are you referring to Google Ads
Yes.
specifically? Yeah. So Google Ads is a whole thing, but competition drives up prices,
Mhm.
right? So it's just going to become more and more expensive to do Google Ads as more therapists kind of come on to the scene. And there are more therapists in private practice than there ever have been. And so you're not just competing, of course, against other group practices, you're competing against all of the solo practitioners in San Antonio as well. So, I mean, I think my goal for most of my clients, depending on what they have set up, their market, it's a complicated decision. But my goal is always to at least be building out their organic presence, even if they have Google Ads going on, because Google Ads is a great marketing tool. But thinking more about how can I build up the assets that I own on Google. Obviously, your website, when you do SEO, every time you invest in your website, you own that. You're not paying Google. Like you own every piece of content, you own every backlink. As much as you can own a Google review since it's on like another platform, you own those. And since you are so established, 10 years in, I bet you have a huge network, right? So even going back to your network, I think asking colleagues for reviews, I don't think I've ever met a therapist who's uncomfortable with that review generation strategy. But Google Maps is really helpful. And as a group practice, you have the benefit of numbers on your side. Like a solo practitioner might have 10 people they can ask for reviews. You think about all the people that you've met, all of your employees, all of their connections. So, in some ways, establishing that authority on Google is easier for group practices just because you have more people working for you. And with Google Ads, I think it's just working with the best partner that's going to help you keep costs down and get the most out of that campaign. Google Ads is not my specialty, so I'm not going to comment on it too much, but there are a lot of great companies out there. So it could also be the company you work with. Maybe they're just not performing as well as they used to.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Steve?
Yeah, I'd like to ask, in your sense, how much, if you're running Google Ads, should a cost per sort of lead be?
Hmm. Yeah, I think I have done some Google ads myself, and I think the campaigns that I was happiest with, cost per lead was maybe like $30 to $45, and then cost per signed client. Are you private pay?
No, we use
Okay.
insurance.
Okay. Yeah, so that definitely brings the cost down for sure if you're not private pay. But I think maybe $150 to bring a client into your practice. You would probably be making profit on that after a couple sessions, after, the fee split and everything. So I think $150 is a great cost per acquisition for Google Ads, but it takes time to get a campaign to that spot.
Right. So another question, my sense has been like there's a lot of competition, but I also feel like now we're competing with like these big organizations like BetterHelp that are, dropping hundreds of thousands in our
Yeah.
market. We're in Chicago, so it's a pretty big market.
Mm.
Um, there's a lot of competitors, but there's a lot of these big things. And so like I noticed like Indeed, even running an Indeed ad, I can run $200 used to get like 27 applications. I can run $200 and get like nothing now. So I'm
Mm.
wondering, one, I don't know if anybody knows, but does that feel like part of what's happening is because some of these national brands can advertise everywhere? Is that also part of the competition that we're up against?
Yeah, I definitely think that would be driving up costs, because Google doesn't care that you're a small practice that does good work on Google Ads. They don't care.
They don't
Like
care.
they just want whoever has the most money. Which is why I don't like relying on it as a lead generation channel. Like I think it's a great supplemental, but again, my goal is always for my clients to have an organic strategy first for reasons like that. Um, and are companies like BetterHelp your competition in a way? Yes. But there's always going to be a market for people looking for local therapists. And they can't really compete in like Chicago specifically. BetterHelp isn't going to get an office in Chicago because that is not a scalable marketing strategy for them. And their whole thing is scale,
Yeah.
right? So they're not going to go into all of these markets and try to do Google business and try to get Google business reviews because it's a lot of work to do that. They would much rather say, here's our one campaign, we're targeting everywhere. Let's put, a couple $100,000 this month and see how it goes. That's what they're doing. So you have that unique advantage as a small business because, first of all, people want that, but also they're never going to put in the effort that you will into your practice, if that makes sense. But they're certainly driving up costs. Yes.
Just a follow-up question, like, does it help to be more niche on Google Ads so that, some of these bigger competitors are coming in with general words like counseling near me or therapist versus dialectical behavioral therapy, EMDR, like those types of things?
Yeah, you're always going to get better results with those more specific keywords. So you can create landing pages for specific services, specific presenting issues. That's going to go better because it's going to be more cost effective. Those therapy seekers are going to be more motivated also. Because likely someone searching therapists near me probably like has not been in therapy before because I think someone who's been in therapy even once, maybe they did BetterHelp and they had a bad experience, but now they're like, all right, not doing that again. They're likely going to be more specific in their search. So I don't even recommend really advertising for those general keywords. You can always experiment with it. But Google Ads is also going to they don't split up your budget based on your preferences, right? So if therapist near me has way more search volume than trauma therapist near me, that's where your budget is going to go. You can't really tell them like I only want 10% of my budget going towards that. It's not how it works. So I definitely recommend specificity.
I have a question, Kristie. Some of the practices we work with come in and are at newer stages of growth, or maybe are working with therapists newer to their team, and retention is an issue or a problem that they're facing out of the gates with us in our relationship. And that's part of our goals that we work on with them is to really help them and the right strategies, arm them with the right strategies for how to improve retention. But if you see, if we're working with a practice, or if you were working with a practice whose retention is perhaps low and they're in those early growth stages, would you still encourage them to lean into reviews at this point? Or would you recommend them to, work on that strategically as a practice over time before leaning into reviews with more confidence?
That's a really good question. And I think I've just noticed from therapists over the years, they're of course afraid of that bad review. Because
Mm,
yeah, sometimes it's like I didn't do as good of a job in that relationship, and that's legit. But also some people are just like they were never going to be happy anyways. Those kinds of people are out there too, right? So I think if retention, churn rate, those are issues right now, I would go more on the colleague Google Business reviews
mhm.
in the short term as you improve that and build out the infrastructure for more client reviews. But yeah, I mean, it's not the worst thing to get a bad review. I think actually people trust, I think the ultimate trust number for a Google review, like an average star rating is 4.7 out of 5. So people actually trust all 5 stars less. That's not to say you shouldn't go for all 5 stars. Like, go for all 5 stars. But people still trust a business that has some bad reviews. And sometimes you can read that review and it's like, yeah, maybe this is the place for me. But I also think savvy consumers can read reviews when they can kind of tell that someone's just being pretty salty. Like, I think they're savvy enough to kind of sniff those out as well. But yeah, on the safe side, I do think it would be good to lean more into your referral network first instead of going after the client ones, just in case.
That's great.
Along those lines, I have found that we tended to, like, early on get a lot of new clinicians, and I was a Montessori teacher before, so I'm like, oh, this person, we can find workability, we'll train them, they'll be good. And then they were just losing clients a lot, and it felt like the ads, we're spending money on ads, and our great therapists were full and didn't take new clients. All the new clients were going to the therapists that were losing them all, and so we were losing a lot of, not necessarily SEO, but yeah, our ad money was just like pouring down the drain. I think one thing that's been super helpful with PracticeVitals, still figuring out how to use it, but I just did a thing yesterday where one of the clinicians was saying she would lose her clients after a certain amount of time. We were able to look and see people left at 5, 7, and 10, and then diagnose what was happening for her at that point. And hopefully that'll help with retention, but it was like very helpful to kind of like be able to identify the people and why they were leaving, and maybe even like let some of those people who were losing a lot of clients go, so that the ad money actually is generating clients that stay with us instead of having them all just sort of leave.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of why we love to look at churn and retention hand to hand, because, if you're only looking at retention, you're seeing who's making it to that longer relationship, but churn can be that leaky bucket metric that tells a totally different and helpful story for where you need to plug the gaps or plug the leak, if you will, if there are sort of these clients that are coming in the door and then leaving after a few sessions when you're working hard to acquire them with those marketing reviews or spend. So, so often we work with people who kind of come into PracticeVital with retention top of mind, but learn how valuable churn knowledge can be, just as a sort of flip side of that coin, in understanding what problems to solve and then what growth to get to from a retention standpoint. Those together really can make that more informed balance of, once the client's in the door, how do we keep them in the door? How do we help them become advocates for us as a practice and feed that loop that Kristie was saying of, like, it's this revolving cycle of referrals and positive experiences. And if you have that leak dropping out of that cycle too soon or too frequently, then that's the area to lean into first and foremost, right?
And just making the most of your marketing dollars, to your point, Steve. It's you can be outspent, like you all are from like the BetterHelp platforms, right? But if you can make the most of the people that you're getting in, and like you're doubling your retention, you're getting double out of your marketing dollars. You might as well be spending, hypothetically, you could be spending double that to get the same value from a client. So it is all very, very connected, I think. And what's nice about when you focus on like the client and retention piece, I'm not sure how much you all talk about in these containers, but the value of your practice if you want to sell, right? So it's like, if you have all these, these great client outcomes, the reviews, a process for getting those reviews, you're constantly in this state of momentum, right? And you never sell your business when you're sick of it. That's not when you sell your business. You sell it when it actually looks like it's always in that point of momentum, because it makes it a more valuable asset, right? So if you have all this established on the back end, and then your marketing is just reflecting it because of the hard work you're doing on achieving great clinical outcomes in your practice, that is a selling point, a major one. But I don't know how much you all talk about like selling practices, but
yeah, absolutely.
I can ask Madeline a question. Yeah. Sorry, there are other questions. I don't want to hog time, but if nobody's talking, I'm more than happy to
go for it.
Oh, when I go to Practice Vitals, I find I kind of spin around a little bit, like looking at the clients, looking at this, looking at that, and trying to like figure out kind of like what's happening with a certain clinician.
Mhm.
And I don't know that there's a shorthand way. And maybe that's the whole point. You got to look at it from this angle, then this angle, then this angle, and change the numbers. And I'm just wondering if you have like advice for what is the most direct way to assess what's happening.
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. I gathered you're relatively new to PracticeVital, right? You mentioned
Yeah.
earlier. Um, so first of all, I think we can certainly, if you haven't already, made use of your coaching conversation with Tori. But we have some resources to kind of point you in the right direction to start helping make sense of the data, more easily. But generally speaking, I think it's a matter of sort of getting into some rhythms and building some muscle memory within the tool over time. And I'm sure others on the phone can kind of speak to some of this too, but whether it's going into that clinician metric section and sort of looking from a high level, to collapsing down to that table view if you need to see just who are my people that are popping up in red and why. We're leaning into that and starting to look at the metrics together in context to one another to tell the right story can start to lead to that. There's no like one size fits all playbook for how to assess your data or how to understand what's going on with a clinician. It really takes the combination of metrics together. And that's where we sort of have painted a picture for you to say, okay, let's look at utilization side by side with cancellation and retention and churn and see what kind of story we can start to, excuse me, hypothesize here. Then let's drill into those data sheets to get a little bit more precise in understanding, okay, my hypothesis is that this clinician is experiencing a high cancellation rate. Let's drill into understanding, are they canceling on their clients or are their clients canceling on them? Is this an anomaly in the last couple of weeks that might point to something going on in their life right now? Or is this a trend over the last 6 months? Let's try to diagnose, even in a hypothetical sense, through the data, go through the journey of exploring what really might be happening there to then put together a plan or then have the right meaningful conversation with that person. So I don't know if that's a satisfying answer at a broad level, but I think just generally being able to start to grow that muscle memory and understanding what's happening across a clinician's general day to day or week to week or month to month, and then putting that through the lens of an actionable conversation. Does that answer your question? I think at a high level, and we can
It
maybe
does.
go into
It's
more
actually kind of validating. It's not like I'm missing something. It is kind of like
yeah.
you look at this way, this way, this way. And that's not what's nice about it too, is you can see all this data. And I guess there's a magic button I wish I could push and it would just tell me, but
Well,
you're right. Then you have to go to have the conversation, right? Like like I just said, like what's happening around 5 to 7
yeah.
sessions. And then once I get
Well,
the narrative, now the
yeah.
data plus the narrative gives me a path. So that's really is really helpful actually.
Well, you say magic button, and just know this is maybe a good segue to point into some features that are coming down the pipeline soon. So I will use this as a segue to speak to sort of the magic button that we're working on in this realm. It's called an insight page where we're looking to do kind of what you're getting at, Steve, where there's a wealth of data and knowledge to lean into in our tool. How do we see or extract the real nuggets out of the gates a little bit more easily? We're working on that.
Okay.
So know that when we say a new feature is coming and it's called Insights, that's what, I want you to tune into in the near term. If anyone's interested on this call and hasn't yet reached out from our last newsletter, we mentioned we were interested in some beta testers. Steve, I can add you to that, absolutely.
Yeah, I
If anyone
definitely
else
help.
is, we can get you in there. We're looking to really start rolling this out in stages over the next couple days or weeks. But just again, to give you a peek into what that might look like. So, for example, within this Insights tab within the experience, you might see a little flag that says, hey, we're noticing 3 or 4 of your clinicians really are slipping with their rebook rate. Lean into that. That needs your attention. Or we're
Mm.
noticing that these are the areas of the practice that need a little bit more attention for you in this moment in time based on the last 3 months of data, right? So pulling out some of those insights or findings a little bit more readily to you to surface up sort of a list of here's what needs your attention, or here's just some new ways of looking at the data that you're not already seeing in the tool through our existing experience that might be worth you sort of leaning into. So I know that's a little bit vague in some of the specifics, but we're hearing you in the interest for more of that surfacing up of key takeaways or action items within the tool.
I have a kind of a follow-up question because I appreciate you asking this, Steve, because we're just getting ready to have our clinical director really unroll this with the team. And then we are kind of requesting that our team have access to our account too. Would there be something similar for the team member to preview?
The clinician themselves.
Right? Like, would there be a clinician's insight? Because I feel like that could be like our ultimate goal is, yes, our clinical director will have her pulse on all of our clinicians and be connecting with them on a regular basis to review, but that the clinician would be coming to those meetings with that insight, that overview, right? And it feels like it could be so helpful for them as well.
Yeah.
Have that information.
Yeah, great question. The ultimate goal is, yes, to have clinician specific insights. Starting out, we're just looking at more of that leadership admin level, knowing that that's the primary user for the full experience. But I will definitely make a note of you in particular to follow through with and say, like, what's a version of this that makes sense for your clinician? Or what's the specific highlight you want your team seeing? Because that's definitely the sort of long-term view here is how do we have those insights as tailored as possible for not just a practice, but also for the specific user that's in there.
Cool.
Great question. Other thoughts or questions to dig into today? We can now, broaden the conversation as we sort of have just now to anything PracticeVital related or questions, thoughts from the group that's joined.
Kind of random question. Because I know some of the adjustments have to be done not by us, but on the back end. So if there is something around changing, is that just like a support email?
Yes. Feel free to just shoot a note to support@practicevital.com. Kevin here, you can raise your hand, is often responding. So if you just have something that pops up as a flag that isn't automatically updated but needs you to reach out to us, that's just support@PracticeVital. Yep.
I'm looking at like our the way the back end settings are for cancellations. And so we are a private practice and our cancellation rate right now is sent, I think, like to a lower than our average is. So it's like in the throw off data that we know, like on average in the year, about 20% cancellation is what our practice experiences. But I think the setting is auto done, and I couldn't find where I could change that myself. Is that true? Or should I, is there some
with cancellations, it'll be a support thing on the back end because it with back end stuff, it gets kind of complicated. And there's a lot more things that go into it than just like a flick of a button. But I'm happy to take a look at that. Malia. I know there's some things I owe you too on the support queue. So
no rush. I just thought I would jump on. It seemed like a simple question. I'm like, I'm either just totally missing where to do that.
I think just to make sure that you're not just talking about this piece, where if you go into your settings metrics, I wasn't sure if you were saying, can I change the thresholds for the cancellation rate to be customized to your practice?
I think I was in there. And then if you click edit, does it?
Yeah, so you can change any of these yourself.
Okay. That might have been part of it, but I feel like there was something else I couldn't find. So I'll take a peek and send Kevin a message.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
All right. Any other questions from the group? Okay. Well, we will keep everyone posted on that insights feature. Keep an eye out for more to come, and we will certainly add a few of you to that beta test if you're willing to share some feedback with us in the early stages. And continue to reach out to support or any of us with questions as they pop up with your experience. Special thank you to Kristie for joining us today and sharing your knowledge, your experience, your wisdom. And we will CC you on the note out to the team with this recording in case anyone wants to follow up with you directly for more conversation. But appreciate your help here today and connecting the dots with us on the SEO front for our retention strategies.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for having me. PracticeVital is so cool. Like the Vital is showing me it's just such an amazing tool for group practice owners. So it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Kristie. Appreciate it. Great. Well, take care, everyone. Like I said, reach out anytime and enjoy the rest of your week and weekend ahead.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Take care.